AfriForum sparked outrage this week when Kali Kriel said that apartheid was not a crime against humanity. We're going to be talking to him here on News24 to find out why exactly are you rewriting history. The United Nations declared the apartheid system a crime against humanity. You came on this week and you said this was not the case.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, ma'am. Firstly, I just want to say there's no effort from AfriForum side to rewrite history. I think what happened, unfortunately, there was a tweet that quoted one specific passage and did not give the context of what I said. So I will gladly give the context.
Go for it.
AfriForum believes in a concept of mutual recognition and respect among people. We believe that people's dignity should be respected. And in our minds, there's no doubt that people's dignity were infringed upon during the apartheid system. So people trying to call us all names that we are in denial and so forth, that is definitely not the case. What I said, and I said specifically, we don't see it as a crime against humanity. The context for that is, in 1973, the fact was before the UN, and it was during the Cold War era. What then happened, the United States ambassador said, even though they don't agree with the apartheid system, they said that it should not be seen in the same light as what we saw under communism, where 100 million people were killed under those systems, what we saw in Germany, where there was 6 million people sent by Hitler into the gas chambers, and that was the context on that. What we are all in favor of is to say, let's be frank about history and speak openly about that.
You're quoting the American ambassador, yes, but you're not quoting everybody else that yes, was within the United Nations, yeah, leading to that declaration. I mean, yeah, why are you being selective on this part?
The context also of that is specifically, the motion was driven by the communist bloc, especially the USSR, and they had a communist system, and we know what atrocities happened with Lenin and so forth. So that motion was supported by people that were dictators and so forth. And that is a historical fact. And also the other fact is, if you normally see after what is classified as a crime against humanity, Nuremberg-style prosecutions, as we saw with the Nazis and so forth. But we did not see that in South Africa. If it was today, it would be a different case, because you now have the Rome Statute that came into power in the early 2000s,
okay,
and so forth.
Mr. Kriel, I hear you on that, and South Africans chose the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, yeah, emphasizing on reconciliation, yeah, and perhaps not the prosecutions. And I think a lot of people are saying right now, perhaps that was not the right way. We should have actually prosecuted. But I just want to say, as a matter of principle, if you are describing something that is a crime against humanity, it is when you have an institutionalized regime that is very systematic in oppressing a certain racial group. And that is what happened with South Africa. You're also comparing the numbers of deaths. In South Africa, we know that they were not documented as maybe as well as what happened with the Jewish massacres or any other of the massacres. Are you saying that because there were less people killed, therefore this does not qualify as a crime against humanity? Or it was a lesser crime?
Every person that was killed, it is actually something that we should all mourn. Nobody should lose their lives, or their dignity should be infringed upon. We might disagree in terms of the definitions and so forth, and the international law that was in place at that stage. But simply what we are asking is, we will gladly debate as you are doing now with those kind of facts. But what is unfortunate, as soon as you try to have some form of a debate, you are immediately branded as a denialist, somebody that does not care for the suffering of black people and so forth. And that is
insensitive. Because a lot of South Africans, including myself, are the victims of that apartheid regime. So you can imagine we are still living through the consequences of that institutionalized racist regime.
I have respect for that sensitivity, but what I believe is quite important, that we should not have no-nos in our debate and say immediately if somebody says something you disagree with, they are immediately seen as somebody that is negative towards black people and so forth. And I want people to judge us on our own actions, not how other people portray us.
But also what you say, we should judge you by what you say. I'm just wondering now, is it not hypocritical? On the one hand, you were in the United States, you were claiming that the farm murders are genocide, and people in Rwanda who lived through a genocide where close to 1 million people were actually killed will say, in terms of numbers, you can't call the farm murders genocide. This is actually a criminal element.
That is again something that somebody else said about us and not what we said. We never in any place used the term so-called genocide. What we guide ourselves by is an organization called Genocide Watch that said this is not genocide in the sense as we've seen in Rwanda, but they said that there are dangerous signs in terms of people being able to make derogatory statements and calling minorities derogatory things, such as Julius Malema saying, we're not calling for the wholesale slaughter of whites, at least not for now. You have him praising a lion that attacks a farmer. You had the former president saying, well, all the problems in the country started when my forefathers arrived. You have the current president that said at a rally for the election, you have to go and vote, otherwise the Boer are going to oppress you again. So those are signs that I think are irresponsible. But the fact is, people are saying things that we never said, and I would then say, judge us by what we do. If you go and look, people say we only look at the interests of a certain community. The fact is, we're not ashamed by the fact that we take on issues that are of importance to many Afrikaners, but we like a woman. A woman can do more than one thing at a time. And judge us by what we're doing at the moment. We are in court at the moment on behalf of kids in Kandla that don't get to school from the KwaZulu-Natal Education Department. We're going to court on behalf of a rural kingdom in Limpopo where their land was abused by mining companies. We represent the Dube family to make sure they get justice with regard to the homicide case, culpable homicide case against Ruzani Zuma. We represent Gabriella Engels. If we fix potholes, there's not a sign saying, only Afrikaners can drive over this. That is something in the interest of all. So there are many things that we do to the benefit of the broader community, and we're proud of that. But unfortunately, the small group of commentators, they put things in our mouths that we don't say, or when we say something with regard to apartheid, they don't give the context. They portray it as if we are saying apartheid was a good system, and we never said that.
Okay, I hear you about the work that you are doing where you say it is good, but it is what you are actually saying. I mean, just now this week, there's another issue where Mr. Root basically was calling for academics to be hanged, literally.
Again, I call on all people to go and watch that video, what he said. He tried to say that you have certain commentators and academia that are not in touch with the suffering of normal people on grassroots level. But he said quite clearly that we do not call to harm people. So he tried to portray.
But when you use a code, when you know what that code represents and what it means, how do you turn around and say you were not meaning any harm to academics?
No, because he said quite clearly after he spoke, and people should not listen to what people say about the video. They should watch it themselves and decide for themselves. He stated quite categorically that that's not what he meant. That quote, we must look at, it happened in Nazi Germany, yes, where there were academia that did not want to speak openly about the injustices that happened in Nazi Germany. And this person wrote that because those people did not recognize the suffering of normal people on grassroots level. But he said that to portray that, but he never in any instance said that she should be harmed. He actually said totally the opposite.
We will agree to disagree on that one, but let's talk about your recent trip to America. What was the purpose of that trip?
That trip, we know that the South African president said in Parliament we should come back and we should not campaign against our own country. Unfortunately, I think there's a problem if the ruling party sees their own interests as the same as those of the country. What we did is a deed of patriotism.
Deed of patriotism?
It is most definitely a deed of patriotism, and I'll tell you why. If you go and look what happened in places like Cuba, Venezuela and Zimbabwe, when property rights was not respected, it was not simply just one group of property owners that were harmed. We know in Zimbabwe today the economy was destroyed. There's a 90% unemployment rate. So that is to the detriment of a country. So if we go and speak out and say, people, tell the South African government, the ruling party, that this will destroy their economy, we are trying to avert a catastrophe in this country.
What catastrophe, Mr. Krill? I mean, we are at the current moment going through a parliamentary process where anybody, yourself, myself, can go and contribute in terms of what we think should happen to Section 25. And we are not even at a point where a decision has been taken. There's even been extensions to the public submissions. I mean, what catastrophe are you talking about? This is alarmist.
The catastrophe is that the ruling party in December at their National Congress adopted a policy to expropriate without compensation. The catastrophe is when the country's president says on various platforms, we are going to expropriate land without compensation to give it to our people. Well, the our people is already a worrying issue. Is he not the president of everybody? So that is their stated policy, and we have to mobilize against that, as is the right of any group to do so.
So you're very selective in who you go and see. Conservative lawmakers, you choose Fox News with its conservative views that has portrayed the land issue as part of this so-called genocide against white people in South Africa. And you did not correct any of those statements that they have made as a media house.
What we unfortunately see, you have people like Adam Habib calling us Nazis and then making statements that's not true. He says we spoke to Front National in France and the Alternative for Germany in Germany and so forth, and we spoke to alt-right groups and so forth. We never did that. We are a mainstream organization. And you can have your views on Fox News, but they are the biggest.
My issue is you not correcting them, because we have had statements made by some people from Fox News stating that part of the project on land is part of this so-called genocide against white people. And you did not correct that perception to say that, look, there is a parliamentary process very different to what happened in Zimbabwe, where tomorrow it was decided by the president that they're expropriating land without compensation. In this country, which is a constitutional democracy, we are going through a National Assembly process.
Fox News never referred to genocide and those called. They said what the threat was with regard to land, and also mentioned the problem that we have on farm murders in South Africa. And we believe that is an important message to bring across, because the problem now is people don't react to what we say, they just simply react to who we are. But what we say, farm murders is a real issue. It does not mean we're saying other crime is not a real issue. That is why we have a network of community safety initiatives, more than 100 of them, where all communities are involved in. In Elliot, we work with the Taxi Association and do patrols together with them. So we recognize the broader problem. But if you have a situation where people are tortured, an electric drill being used to drill holes into an elderly woman's feet, or somebody is tortured with a blowtorch, that is something that needs to be addressed. And the problem is people are belittling people that suffer under that, and they don't want that message to come through.
Is it not because Because you have racialized it. And both the issue of land and also the farm murders, because we are a very violent country, and the crime in this country is very violent. So, if land is nationalized, I will also lose my little piece of land that I would probably own as a black person, right? If I am a farmer living in a very isolated area, I would probably also be at similar risk of being attacked because of these criminals that are going for easy targets, people that are in open spaces that do not have access to police readily. The racialization of it, which is what the Fox medias and you guys have done, is part of belittling the problem instead of actually just addressing it.
No, we've never racialized the issue. If we speak about the land issue, it was racialized by the Deputy President of this country, Mr. Mabuza, when he said whites should give up their land voluntarily to make sure that there's not violence and will be taken by force. He racialized the issue of those kind of remarks. If you look at the motion that was adopted in Parliament and you read the first few paragraphs, it racializes the issue.
Because, the issue of land would be racialized from a historic context, that it was land that was taken away from original people of South Africa who are of Khoi, black, etc. descent, right? And it was colonizers who moved in. But right now, if we're talking about nationalizing land, there are black people who actually do own land and are also at risk of losing it. And that is why I'm saying the other project that we're moving to is not necessarily targeted at white people.
Well, then he should speak to the Deputy President that he should not racialize the issue. As I've said...
You have not yourself.
Well, we've reacted to what he said. We have to take seriously what government leaders say. We cannot simply just stand back and say, okay, let's just rather ignore it and pretend that he never said that. So he has racialized the issue. The fact is, in terms of farm murders, in all our documents, also in the book on farm murders that we took to the US, it states that there are also black people that are suffering under this. 30% of people that die in farm murders are black people. So we put the facts on the table. But what we are worried about specifically, we're worried about all murders in the country. But I think the fact that you're having 20% of farm murders, you have where people are tortured and being brutally killed. It's one thing to say, well, you tie somebody up to steal, or you kill them to steal, which is bad enough. But if you're going to torture somebody for hours, then there is a very big problem, and that problem is not helped by the fact that people are making minorities a scapegoat and making these so-called anti-Afrikaner, anti-white statements. And that is what we are against.
But you do concede that there is no wholesome plan targeted specifically at white farmers.
There's not a wholesale murder of people as in what you had in Rwanda, or the gassing of people as you had in Nazi Germany and so forth. And that we state quite clearly. But we said, here are serious dangerous signs. In Rwanda, it started off by people being called so-called cockroaches. And it actually became acceptable in the discourse in the country to make derogatory statements by people or about people, and nobody really took it seriously. And that is why we are saying those same people that criticize us for what we are doing, they should also criticize when Julius Malema says these serious things about people, making statements such as, I don't hate whites, but I specifically just love black people. Those kind of statements. We don't hear Adam Abib or Elmin du Plessis or those handful of people that are actually anti-AfriForum activists portraying themselves as journalists or academia.
I don't think they're portraying themselves as academia because they are academics. But I think there has been criticism of Julius Malema as well. I mean, let's be honest, it has been there. Yes. Similarly as it should be against you.
Yes, but it is not. It is only a few people that speak out, and it's not a national outburst. And that is our problem. We should not have double standards in the country. We're not afraid of criticism. Of course, we would prefer that criticism is based on what we do, and not on what people think we are.
Just as a last question, Mr. Kriel. We are clearly still a very divided nation. That project of reconciliation is by far nowhere near anything. What is AfriForum doing in terms of making your constituency, which is white, right, understand issues of white privilege, understand issues of we need to share the land? What are you doing practically to make sure that, you know, the other side, your side, reaches out to the black community as well?
What we do specifically, if you look at our local projects, of our more than 100 branches countrywide, you can go project by project. It is those are projects that are to the benefit of the community as a whole. And I think the one brilliant thing that we are seeing is that there is, despite the divisions in the political discourse, that there is a strong feeling on local level for people from all communities to work together. And we should, I want to quote Winston Churchill when he said, we should not confuse published opinion with public opinion. What we experience from the statements made by our BIP and so forth is not what we experience on grassroots level. And we will not be deterred. We will continue to cooperate with people as we represented the Dube family, as we represented Gabriella Engels, as we representing the people of Nkandla, as we are representing the kingdom in Limpopo, as we are working with communities across the country to tackle crime. Those things we will go ahead, and we will not be deterred by false accusations. You know, I always say to our staff members, when we do what we do, when you sometimes go against the agenda of another political grouping, they would try and portray you. The easiest method is to stereotype you, portray you as some kind of a racist and so forth. We cannot stop that from happening. All we can do is to make sure that those accusations are not true. And I can tell you today, South Africa, from all communities, AfriForum respects the dignity of all people. We are here to stay. We've been here for more than 360 years. We're not Europeans. If I go back there, I struggle with the language there. I don't feel at home there. So we want to make sure that this country should be built to the benefit of all people. And we also want to extend the hand of friendship to say to people, you might disagree with us on some issues, but if you differ on many issues, it does not hinder you from working together on those common goals. And we are willing to work with anybody. We announcing at the Solidarity Movement's Congress today that we want to go into a process of the renewal of trust amongst the various communities in this country. We also want to engage government because it's in none of our interests if we go into a conflict situation. The Zuma years has done a lot of damage to our country. It has created a lot of divisions amongst people, and it is now time to correct that. But in correcting that, we cannot be silent with regard to burning issues such as farm murders, such as crime as a whole, such as expropriation without compensation.
Unfortunately, we've ran out of time, but that was AfriForum's Kali Kriel joining us here on News 24.